Peace be upon you, class. I am Munir Biruk, the instructor of this course, Readings in Culture. We saw previously how Greek mythology influenced and shaped in significant ways Western civilization and its culture. Another source that impacted Western life and Western culture even so profoundly was the Christian religion. So, if you want to understand and, let's say, appreciate Western culture, you should have at least a preliminary knowledge of these two sources, Greek myths and the Christian religion. Of course, these are two broad disciplines which require expertise, a long time, and great efforts in order to develop a fairly acceptable and respectable knowledge of them. But as foreign students of English literature, we are required just to scratch the surface of these two sources and acquire basic and surface knowledge of these two sources. I said earlier that Christianity impacted, or the impact of Christianity on Western life was even so uh, more so profound than Greek myths. This is because Christianity infiltrated and permeated all aspects of Western life. Malik ibn Nabi, the Algerian intellectual and writer, once said that all great civilizations were outgrowths of great religions. So basically, whenever or wherever there is a great civilization, it must have been predicated and established and born out of a great religion. Dante Alighieri's The Divine Comedy is an outstanding example. This is a classic poem in Western culture, which was shaped and inspired by the European medieval worldview, which was structured by down to the minutest detail by the Christian religion, and this is a poem which also became a classic which influenced and impacted in significant ways different aspects of Western culture. We can encounter its traces in both high culture and popular culture, in poetry, novels, music, movies, and even in video games. I don't know if you watched the movie of Inferno by Tom Hanks, I think, which was in turn an adaptation of Dan Brown's well-known novel Inferno. This is a movie, or just this is a novel which was partly influenced by Dante's The Divine Comedy. There are many other examples. This is a very basic introduction into Dante Alighieri's The Divine Comedy. I divided this lecture into two short presentations. In the first presentation, we'll have a general overview of the Divine Comedy, its author, its genre, its structure, some of its themes. This is basically an initiation into the world of the poem. In the second presentation, we will focus on the fifth canto, or rather extracts from the fifth canto, and we will carry out analysis, or it's not even an analysis; it's a simple reading of this canto. This is readings in culture course, and the aim is just to familiarize you and initiate you into the world of some classic texts. So we'll get started in a few seconds. Fasten your seat belts. So in this presentation, we'll just have a glimpse of Dante Alighieri. Who is he? What is a Divine Comedy? What genre is it? When was it written? And how is the poem structured? And we'll read some extracts from the first canto. Dante Alighieri is the author of the Divine Comedy. He was a poet and politician. He lived in the 13th century in medieval Italy. He was born in the city of Florence. Because of his undesirable political activities, he fled his city of Florence and he was forced to live in neighboring Italian cities, and he had never been able to go back to his native city until his death. I read somewhere that his corpse was brought back to his native city later. One major event in his life was his encounter with a young girl called Beatrice, or in Italian I think Beatrice. It was a very strange encounter because it was reported that he was never been able to speak to her, and she was only 9 years old and he was some 2 years old or so older than her, and they have never been, or they had never been able to marry to each other, and each one of them married a different spouse. But this love remained with Dante all through his life. It was so profound and so deep that it impacted his life and influenced his writings and his poetry. And in the Divine Comedy, Beatrice played a very significant role, as we shall see. So, what's the matter with the title itself? The Divine Comedy is not a conventional title of a poem after all, isn't it? Actually, Dante originally titled his poem simply Comedy. But comedy didn't used to mean what we understand of the word today, that is something which is comic. Instead, comedy in Dante's time meant something which is happy or something which has a happy ending. Dante's poem itself ends on a happy and a cheerful note. But because of the outstanding religious subject of Dante's poem, and because of its grandiose and elevated style and beautiful language, and above all because of the impact it has, or it had, on the imagination of many people after his death, people associated and juxtaposed the adjective divine with comedy, and hence the title, the Divine Comedy. The setting of the poem is typical of the settings in epic poems. The setting is magnificent, grandiose, and great, and the events took place in 1300, that is in the 14th century, and trespass the boundary between two spaces, between a dark forest in medieval Italy and the strange paranormal world of the hereafter. So, what is the Divine Comedy about? Briefly, the Divine Comedy is about the journey of Dante the character, and not Dante the poet, from a dark forest in medieval Italy into the world of the hereafter, a world in which he has to go through three places or three stages. The first is hell, which he reached after he descended down earth, and after he goes through or crosses hell or goes through hell, he ascends up the Purgatory, and from there down and up again into paradise, after which he came face to face with the divine. But Divine Comedy is also an allegorical poem, that is, it has a symbolic layer to it, and in this sense it is a journey of the soul, and not only of Dante, the character, but also journey of the soul, a journey in which the soul embarks on a quest for knowledge and quest for purification before it came face to face with the divine, or before it became worthy of seeing and encountering the divine. The poem is divided into three main parts. The first is Inferno, or hell. The second is Purgatio, or purgatory. The third is Paradiso, or paradise. And it is composed of 100 cantos. Canto is something like a chapter. Each each of these three parts is composed of 33 cantos, with one canto right in the beginning of the poem, which serves as a general introduction. The Divine Comedy is an epic poem. In Arabic, epic means al-malhama or al-malhama al-sharia. The epic poem is often an extraordinarily long poem. Some epic poems are even composed of thousands of lines. A typical example are the Iliad and the Odyssey, the two classic Greek epic poems which had an everlasting influence on Western literature and culture. The protagonist of the epic poem is by no means an ordinary hero. Instead, the hero is a historical or traditional figure with outstanding capacities and of great significance. The setting, that is, the time and place in which events unfold, is large and magnificent and grandiose, and does not often conform to the conventional settings which we encounter in ordinary poems or stories or novels. So, for example, we don't expect to encounter such settings as a house or small town or a city or even a country in an epic poem. The setting is often larger than that, and in some cases encompasses not only this world but other worlds and other times with supernatural and paranormal elements. Because of that, the actions and the deeds are themselves great and have far-reaching consequences, and are often transformative of the characters in the poem, in the epic poem, and transformative of the world or even the universe at large. The style of the epic poem is dignified and elevated, the language is lofty, the diction, that is, the vocabulary, is archaic and certainly not, or certainly challenging to the modern reader. The epic poem has a didactic purpose, that is, it often has a moral lesson to teach and to convey. Well, this is a drawing of hell as Dante conceives of it. It is composed of 9 circles. We'll come back to that again, and it is located in down in the earth, and its very pit, that is, its bottom is or opposes the other side of the city of Jerusalem. We'll come back to this in the second presentation. The second part of the Divine Comedy is Purgatio, or Purgatory, and this is an in-between space between hell and the Purgatory. It's fairly something like what is called in Islamic tradition al-A'raf, something which is in between those two spaces between hell and paradise. As I insist, as Dante conceives of it, this does not belong to any real representation of hell and paradise as they are only God knows their reality. And this is a representation of Paradiso, or Paradise, the third stage in his journey across in the hereafter. And it is here where he met some very important Christian figures. One of them is his lifetime love, Beatrice. The first canto serves as an introduction into the whole poem. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward pathway had been lost. Ah me, how hard a thing it is to say what was this force savage, rough and stern, which in the very thought renews the fear. So bitter it is, that is a little more. But of the good to treat, which there I found, speak will I of the other things I saw there. I cannot well repeat how there I entered, so full was I of slumber at the moment in which I had abandoned the true way. Few ideas, okay, in brief. We know from the first line that he started his journey while he was 35. How he came to that? Okay, the Bible tells us that the average, or that the average age of a person is 70 years old, and half of that is midway upon the journey of life, is 35 years. This is quite similar to the Islamic tradition. I recall a tradition or a saying by the Prophet, peace be upon him, in which he says that the average age of a person from his ummah is between 60 and 70. Another idea is just he abruptly found himself, and he doesn't know how he came there, in a dark forest. And darkness here is symbolic of fear, intimidation, confusion, and above all of sin. Okay, this is quite manifest and clear and illustrated by couple of words which he uses in this canto. He said that he lost the true way and the straightforward way and the straightforward path, which is of course the straightforward path of the Christian teachings and the teachings of Jesus. So, and this, so generally speaking, he found himself in a dark forest, and he's going to embark on a journey, which is also typical of many writings which are inspired by the Christian tradition, a journey from darkness into light. This is a painting of Dante in a dark forest. Next, in Canto 1, we know that it is the very beginning of the morning and the sun was just rising. Dante, the character, was eager to leave this gloomy and dark place, and as he made his way up the hill towards sunlight, he was intercepted by three beasts, three animals: a panther or leopard, a lion, and a wolf. And we also understand from this canto that the sun and sunlight are symbols and metaphors of something which is transcendent, of something which is divine, namely of divine love and divine compassion, as Dante himself understand it to be. And we also infer that the three animals, the panther, the lion, and the wolf, are more than animals, than physical animals, because they stood on the way between Dante and sunlight and the source of enlightenment, because they impeded his way towards enlightenment and towards the escape of this gloomy and dark place, they must connotate something which is vicious and something which has an evil character. So I leave it to you to look for the connotative and symbolic meaning of these three animals. Look it up on the internet and get back to me, and we'll certainly speak about the three animals in the next presentation. So while Dante was stuck in the dark forest with the three animals, there appeared a man called Virgilius, or Virgil, the renowned Roman poet who wrote the Aeneid, another famous epic poem and one of the classics of Western literature. Dante couldn't hide his admiration and reverence for Virgil, whom he described as a river of speech and a master of beautiful style, and he even described him as his own master, from which he learned the twists and secrets of poetic language. This is one of the many representations of Dante in the dark forest with Virgil, his master and savior from the darkness of the forest and from the three beasts. Virgil then told Dante that he was sent by Beatrice and that he is here on a divine mission to save him from the three beasts and to guide him through towards light and enlightenment. As a true Christian believer, Dante couldn't turn down such a divine messenger, so he accepted his offer as a guide. He moved on and he followed on his steps. In the next presentation, we'll jump into Canto 5 in order to have an idea of how Dante's journey through hell is like. Stay tuned.